Welcome back to the classroom, guys, where it's you, me, and my trusty whiteboard here, going through matters of the body, mind, heart, and spirit in a relatively easy to understand format. My name is Dr. Roshan Ramnarayan, and today, through a viewer's request, we're going to be talking about something really interesting today. We're going to be talking about the subconscious mind. And that's a pretty heavy topic because a lot of us not too sure what it means, because our conscious mind is fairly easy to explain. Our conscious mind is a part of our mind that we use to interact with the world on a daily basis. So for instance, if we all stop and close our eyes and think about a lemon, for instance, and visualize a lemon in our mind, that's our conscious mind at work. That's fairly simple to explain. But the subconscious mind is a bit more difficult, it's a bit more tricky to explain. And so in thinking about how best to present today's lecture, I thought about explaining something that we can all understand and sort of paralleling it with our mind itself. So let's talk about a computer. So let's say, for instance, this is the extremely accurate representation of a power button on a computer. So we push the power button on the computer and the computer powers up. We are greeted by a welcome screen, whether we use Windows, Apple, Linux, whatever operating system that we use. We're looking at the monitor on the screen. We interact with a keyboard and a mouse, right? And on that screen, we see something. We see a welcome screen, we type in our password and whatnot, and we have now our computer to interact with. This is our physical body here, and what we are using is the operating system. The operating system here. And the operating system is what underpins all of the activity within the computer. It essentially holds all the programs. It's stored in the hard drive. And so it stores Word, it stores the internet, whatever browser you use, Chrome, Safari, Windows Explorer, right? Whatever games that we want to play on the computer. The operating system essentially runs and supports all of these things. So it's a random workday. Here we are. We've powered up our computer, and now we have to do some stuff. So let's say through the computer, we powered up our word processing program, and we're there. We're typing. We're interacting with the computer through our keyboard. We're typing away. Oh no, we need to check something. So in the next window, we pull up the internet. And we can interact with the computer like that. And so it goes, and so it goes. So where is the analogy here? Where is the parallel? So for instance, you see these programs that we can interact directly with, add, delete, change things, find data, get data, recall stuff. This is our conscious mind. The hard drive, I would call our brain, especially, because that's the place where everything is stored. And as you're probably guessing, the operating system here is our subconscious. Our subconscious mind. Everything is primed into this operating system to be able to be used. And it's like that. It's always running in the background. It's always present. And for the average user, we never really interact with it directly. It's a bunch of code that's built into the background that allows all of these programs to run cohesively, to run in a sort of alignment next to one another peacefully. Our subconscious mind is what allows our conscious mind to run. It's everything, it is sum total of all the information here that allows these things to happen. This is the analogy that I use. And I use this computer analogy to give an idea of how deep the conscious mind is within our own brain, within our own hard drive. I would call the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse, maybe it's our body, I would say. I would call that our body, because that we also use, make no mistake, we also use our body to interact with our subconscious mind as well. So, this is the parallel. The difference is that from the time of manufacture, this operating system, it's more or less the same. Now, I know that there are updates to the operating system, and those things happen fairly frequently, but by and large, it remains the same. And so it's not something that could be reprogrammed in a sense. The nice thing about it is, our subconscious mind could most certainly be reprogrammed, for better or for worse. So, let's use again, I like to give analogies and stories so that we can understand a difficult concept fairly easily. So let's use a personal characteristic. Let's use fear, for instance. So this is a graph of fear and time. This here, this 0 point is what represents the time a person was born, right? And so let's say now, this is a basal level of fear by virtue of being a human being. And then what happens? Let's say, for instance, as a child, they got into a motor vehicle accident. So their amount of fear spikes, and then it comes back down, but there is now that little extra amount of fear. Our subconscious has been primed. That basal level of fear. And now the years roll on. This happened when they were a child. Let's say, for instance, as a teenager, for instance, let's say their neighbor's home got like a home invasion. Let's just say that, right? So again, fear spiked, and then it's coming down. But again, there is now that little extra background amount of fear. As an adult now going on, let's say, for instance, they had some health issues and they needed surgery for, and there were some complications in the surgery. That level of fear come back down, but make no mistake, is that little extra again. And this represents a priming of the subconscious as the years and through a lifetime, guys. Because remember, this is always running in the background. This is collecting data every minute of every second of every day, so long as we're awake. And it's being primed, it's being trained, not directly, but through circumstances, through the way in which we deal with things. So, are we powerless in dealing and treating with the subconscious? Here is what you came for. How do we prime this? How do we prime and treat with our subconscious? And there is one word that sums it up in the best way. We prime our subconscious through intent. So, using this example, let's say, for instance, the person is now 50 years old, and they realize that there's a lot of trauma that happened to them. Let's say they realize that, oh my goodness, they have, probably at this point they have anxiety now, they have palpitations, and things have gotten to the point now where, okay, we have to fix it. So through their intent, they start to do things to help deal with fear. So let's say, for instance, they started therapy. Let's say, for instance, they started meditation. Okay, so let's use meditation, for instance. So as time goes by now, right, and let's say from here they started meditation, as time goes by, things start to go down, and then it sort of plateaus off because the meditative practice has taken them this far. And so now, the overall fear has lessened. And let's say, for instance, through their meditation, they have come to this point of a little bit of realizing, self-realizing. So let's say, for instance, now, they started at this point now to do some shadow work. And over the years, it starts to dip a little bit more. If anyone has any question about shadow work, you can most certainly check out my previous video on shadow work. And so now, through understanding and through whatever techniques that they use, the fear has decreased. But it all began with an intent. And so forth and so forth. We can prime our subconscious. We can prime our subconscious. So, let me give you another example on intent. So let's say, for instance, I have to buy a car. Let's say, for instance, I have to buy a car because my old car is giving a lot of trouble. It's nearing the end of its life. It's 500 years old. And I'm afraid that it just will stop working in the middle of the road one day. So I buy a car. Versus the intent of buying a car where, something, my neighbor always had a really nice car. I suddenly came into some money, and you know what? I'm going to buy a nice car too. And so the same act of buying a car, but the intent, I need a car, and I need an upgrade, and we could, whatever excuse that we want to sort of give ourselves to buy the car in the second instance. But we bought the car. So let's now take flesh out the intent behind somebody buying a car to sort of keep up with the Joneses or the show off in a sense. So that person very subtly may perhaps wash their car on a Sunday when everyone's out and about and can see them washing their car. Or for instance, the person may, as they're getting home, they may wind down the glass so that their neighbors can see them, for instance. Very, very, very subtly. But those are decisions that are made without our conscious mind even thinking. It's done almost reflexively in a sense. And so my challenge to you guys is this. Think about the decisions that are made without you even thinking about it. For instance, and I always like to give the example of someone being given a bad drive on the road. How do we react to that bad drive on the road? Is a really good indication of exactly where our subconscious is. Are we angry and do we want to cuss the person and their mother? Are we fearful because, oh my goodness, I could have died? Are we, oh my goodness, I hope that person is okay? Are we compassionate? And so I always find that in that sort of quick moment is a really nice way of gauging where our subconscious is at. And so I encourage each and every one of you all today to reflect. At the end of the day, just take about 5 to 10 minutes and when you're taking a nice long shower at the end of the day. You could check my Sleeping Better video as well to check the wind down routine, for instance. Take 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the day and reflect on which decisions were made throughout the day that you didn't have to think about. I realized that I took this other route to get home. I know I bought my new car, and why did I take this route to go home for? Oh, it's because these people that don't like me, they live there, and so I could drive there and show them my new car, for instance. And so, reflecting on those things give a really, really good idea of where our subconscious is at. Because on a practical level, which is how I like to explain these things, our subconscious is running in the background at all time, and it influences how we view the world. That's the bottom line. And it influences those subtle decisions that we make. On one hand, how we view the world, think of that person giving us a bad drive and how we react to it. And on the other hand, how we react to the world in a very, very subtle way. So that to me is the subconscious. And it is the sort of culmination of everything that happened in our life, both good and bad. And most importantly, how we treated with those good and bad things. Because a lot of good things could happen to us, and we could treat with it badly, and we could have gotten spoiled and entitled. But then a lot of bad things could have happened to us, and we treated with it well, and we felt compassionate. So It not just what happens to us, but maybe even more importantly is how we treated with those issues that would have primed our subconscious throughout a lifespan. And I want to end today's lecture on the subconscious by giving you guys an exercise. You know, I like to give exercises because it is the ideal way to empower people, something that they can do on a daily basis for an objective, essentially. And the whole idea behind intent and subconscious, one of the things that unifies both of them is something called affirmations. I'm sure you all would have heard this term before. And very simply put, for those of you all that may not have heard about it, an affirmation it's a thought, it's a phrase that we hold sacred to our mind and our heart, and we say it to ourselves with a certain amount of intent and purpose. And so, for instance, an affirmation is, I am a good person and I'm here to be my brother's keeper. An affirmation could be, I am here to do the best job that I can possibly do. An affirmation could be, I'm here to be as compassionate as possible to everyone I meet, to those I like, and even to those I don't like. It is a statement that's said with a certain amount of power and intent that's held in a sacred space in our minds and our heart. And by doing that on a daily basis, we can, with the correct intent behind it, we can then prime our subconscious and change the way that we look at things. So, that's the lecture, guys. I hope that you guys got a fair idea of exactly how deep the subconscious is layered into our mind, how it works over the course of a lifetime, and perhaps over here, it would have been, this person would have been, because their fear would have been so high, anxiety, palpitations, and all these things would have come layered into the subconscious. And then through acts, through different things, through different methodologies, we can then change that. And finally, to crystallize, one of the ways in which we can change it is through affirmations. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the lecture. If there's any questions or concerns, feel free to shoot me up any messages. This lecture came about as a result of a viewer's question and request. So any requests for any video content that you guys may have, feel free. And once I can, I will. So all the best, guys, and catch you guys on the next classroom.